Hello everybody and welcome to the Whiskey Dictionary. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the goals I had for myself in 2023 and how I did on them, and then also the goals I have for 2024. So I've set quite a few more goals for myself in 2024 than I did in 2023, but it's hard to say, which I can't say I did a great job on 2023. I was able to get about 66% of them, which is reminding me of like college calculus, D for done, right? So in this case, I didn't do great. I had 3 goals, and let me tell you a little bit about them. The first one was I wanted to hit 1.5 million views. I didn't even come close to that. I ended up getting about half of that. Now, that's not a huge surprise. Now, many of you will remember and probably have seen in my reviews in the last couple months, I was basically sick from like August until, you could still kind of hear it a little bit in my voice. Like, it's been like 6 months and I've been some form of sick. And it's nothing, I would like to say it's nothing chronic, but it's been consistent, if nothing else. I'm not really sure what it is. I went on a cruise in August and then I got sick afterwards. Maybe I had corona, I tested negative and everything like that, but something's just hanging around. So because of that, I ended up skipping quite a few weeks towards the end of this year. And that stunk because I didn't really want to. And it wasn't even like I enjoyed the time off because the whole time I just felt guilty not putting out a video. Now, I'm not looking for sympathy or anything like that. More just I had planned on kind of getting back on this weekly schedule and something got in the way and it stunk because I ended up only putting out 42 long form videos this year, whereas normally that number would be at least 52. Usually, maybe 50 at the lower end if I skipped a week or two. But I did put out 57 short form pieces of content. And at the beginning of the year, I was doing things every week, if not 2 of them every week. And I liked doing that. The idea was I would do some sort of like informational thing. I remember I went over, on a Jameson bottle, I talked about the little stamp thing that's on there and why it's a ship. And then I also did the blending, where I would blend multiple whiskeys together and talk about how those went. And you guys seem to like those. Frankly, I'm not sure why I stopped doing the blending. I think maybe the views looked a little lower on those. And then I kind of ran out of little tidbits of info that I wanted to cover for the other ones. So I kind of stopped doing those. And instead I did more of like a day, like a moment in the life of kind of concepts for the shorts. Usually it was mostly me just like spilling a whole bunch of stuff, but that's fine. Either way, I ended up doing 11 live streams as well, which is a record low for me. I know on this channel I don't do a whole lot of live streams, and that's always been because it's hard to find a time that works for me consistently. Without sugarcoating it, like I have a wife, I have kids, I have a full-time job, and like the kids' stuff goes until 8-9 o'clock sometimes most nights. And so if I do want to live stream, it's got to be about 9 o'clock at night. Now, here's the problem. Every other YouTuber in the whiskey space goes on at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, maybe 10. So that space is very filled. And what I need to do is I need to just pick a day and stick to it and do it at that time. Whoever else is streaming at that time, it doesn't really matter. I just need to build my own audience. Part of the problem is that I like most of the channels that are live streaming, and I don't want to just step on their toes because I was late to the party. And that's something I think I mentally need to get past and just do it anyway. So whichever day I end up picking, for anybody who's watching this, if you guys are a WhiskeyTuber or whatever, if I end up going over whatever time you normally live stream, just know it's nothing personal. I just am picking whatever time works for me. Also, I don't have a whole huge audience at the moment, so we'll see what happens. All right, so let me kind of look at my notes here. So my biggest goal, I kind of got off track here, but my biggest goal this year, my actual main thing was I wanted to cover more accessible whiskeys. And I think I did that. When I say accessible, it's not even necessarily inexpensive. The idea was whiskeys that you can find most places. And, I had a few outliers there, of course. I had like the Talisker 18, which I really, really enjoyed. That got my Scotch of the Year this year. But things like the Aberlour Abuna, that's pretty readily available. I did Old Grandad. I did Knob Creek Special Reserve, or Single Barrel Reserve. I said the wrong thing in the video too. And a bunch of other things. I did a whole bunch of whiskeys that are somewhat easy to find. And I liked that concept, except believe it or not, the views weren't as good as I had expected them to be. So I'm not really sure what to do with that direction. Came up with an idea, and I'll talk about that in my 2024 goals. But as far as my personal goal of doing that, checkbox, I did that. I covered accessible whiskeys. Great. I wanted to release 2 single barrels. I actually did 3. So I did the Apricot Affair, from Barrel Spirits. I did the Stellum Rye R2D8, and then I did the Starward. Now, let me talk a minute about the Starward, because I know you guys have heard me talk about these a little bit, but this Starward was like an epic quest in order to get this released, and I think it's worth sharing. I will eventually put out a video where I actually talk about the nosing and tasting of all three of these, but more importantly, and I'm not getting too derailed here, I just want to tell you, I want to talk to you guys. Like, this is what this video is going to be. So if this isn't really what you're looking for, then I guess turn away now, but this is more talking. So with the Starward, I ended up talking to a group in Australia. That's where Starward comes from. And I was like, I want to do a single barrel with you guys, blah, blah, blah. And we went back and forth. And ultimately I picked one. This is back in April of 2023. And by the beginning of May, I had selected it. I had like agreed to sell it and everything. And they said, okay, we're going to ship the barrel over to you. It'll go to a place in New Jersey, and it'll go to my distributor. And basically the idea was it should be ready around June. So I put it up on my website for pre-sale, and I mentioned it was pre-sale. And I said, hey, this is going to be around June timeframe. Well, June came and went. July came and went. August came and went. And I was in constant communication with Starward, and part of the problem was it got stuck in customs. And then another part of the problem was it got stuck in another thing of customs. You would never believe, like, you could assume, but it is actually staggering the lengths that the United States will go to keep alcohol out of the country, which is kind of crazy considering we love booze. So, when all said and done, this finally shipped out to people in December. And people who bought it in April, I felt so bad for them. I actually ended up working with Stellum, and they, for the people who ended up buying one of these two, as well as this, I ended up getting, sorry, not Stellum, Starward, to pay for the shipping of these bottles while waiting for these. So at least people weren't waiting forever for all three of their bottles. They just kind of figured it out. So for those of you that were waiting forever for Starward, I know I've been in communication, but just publicly going to say sorry that things kind of took forever. But we have them very clearly in stock. These are actually selling out fairly quickly, which I'm loving. They're definitely the fastest selling of my single barrels. A lot of people are actually going for the barrel as well. And then quite a few people are going for the Stellum, which is wonderful. This is the cheapest one. This sells for like $50. I want to say this is $79, and then this one's $89. And I love to see people buying the rye because I just think it's cool to have opened up people to rye. Anyway, so all three of these came out this year. I had planned on doing two. I did three. So awesome. You can check those out at whiskeydickpicks.com. I also started that as a website this year because I kind of needed a secondary little company in order to do those kind of sales. So I made whiskeydickpicks.com, which is a moment of joy for me when I got to type in that domain. But anyway, all right. So as I mentioned, my view count wasn't quite what I wanted it to be this year, but that's okay. The 2023 Whiskey Challenge. So I ended up doing this again this year. I did the 2023 Whiskey Challenge, which for those who aren't familiar, the idea is I asked you guys to try different whiskeys from all different categories and log them for me, and then submit them through a Google form. And at the end of the year, I would pick a winner, and those people would receive a gift card. Top three winners. So it's like $100, $75, and $50, which, by the way, I'm sure some of you watching are like, when's he going to pick the winners? I promise I will do it this week. You'll have the video will come out. I'll actually probably do it after I'm done filming this. So I probably won't do that again this year. It's fun, but it's not as interactive as I want it to be. And I think I want to rethink the concept. It's awesome convincing you guys or watching people try like an Indian whiskey where they've never even, steered away from Jim Beam before. And I love that concept, and I hear from you guys, and you love that concept too. But I want to make this more interactive somehow. I don't want it to just be fill out a sheet and then maybe win a gift card, because it's fun for you, but I want it to be fun for everybody who's paying attention. All right, so those were my goals in 2023. As for my 2024 goals, so I've got quite a few, and most of them are more well thought out than the 2023 goals. Mostly I've been wanting to rethink my content strategy, right? And this is not going to sound as technical as it's starting to sound, but the idea is releasing one video a week is fine, but it's not great, and it's certainly not going to grow the channel. That being said, I don't have time to do 2 full-size videos every week. Otherwise, this would be like my full-time job. So I have some things I think I can do in order to at the very least make the videos that I release every week better and work better for the channel as well as for you. And part of that is going to be more predictable. So let's picture a typical 4-week month. If I am going to do content for those 4 weeks, one of them is going to be like an easy to attain whiskey review. Another one might be like a rarer or more hard to acquire whiskey review. One might be an informational video. Another one might be like a versus video. And I have all these categories that I've kind of curated over the years, and I'm not using them to good effect. And it's not going to be every second week of every month is going to be a rare whiskey review. Although that's something I've been entertaining, I just don't know that that will be a consistency that I could keep up with. So we'll see. Either way, that's the idea that I'm thinking of, is I'd like to vary my content and I'd like to release things that you all like, because frankly, I don't think the reviews are really doing it for the channel anymore. And this is something that kind of bothers me, and I don't know how to say it. So I'm definitely not going to name names, but there seems to be an abundance of channels making just clickbait videos. And I hate it. I hate it because it works, and because I find it to be very vapid content, and frankly, like, not really based in anything. Putting out a top 10 video of, whatever, with no real metrics behind how you're rating things, or like, yeah, I think you get it. Like, I've always had this problem, and it's been something that has prevented my channel from growing. But this year, I think I'm going to be changing my tactics to better utilize that without really being clickbait. My hope is to deliver on something. Like, let's say I was to do a top 10 bourbons for under $25 or something video. I want to find a way to justify my findings or my decisions, not just be, I bought 30 whiskeys under $25 and here's the 10. You'll never believe which one's number 3. Like, I hate that, and I don't want that to be my video, but I also am shooting myself in the foot not making some content like that. So if I do end up making content like that, it will only be like once a month, and it will work into that same content strategy. Anyway, photography is something that I've always loved, and I haven't spent much time with, because frankly, taking a picture of a bottle of whiskey doesn't interest me very much, but it's something I kind of want to see if I can make interesting to myself and utilize Instagram better. Instagram is still a fantastic platform for people to find and discover things about whiskey. So my hope is maybe to at least post on Instagram sometimes. I've probably done like 10 posts this whole year. And, that might not matter to you as a person watching YouTube. Maybe you don't really use Instagram very much, but I like photography and I want to find a reason to be excited about it with this channel. Okay, so let's move on, and I'll try to go a little faster here. So cover a wider range of stuff. That's something I really want to try to do. So I talked about my content strategy. I want to try to cover a wider range of whiskeys. When I was doing my recap videos at the end of the year this year, I only had 2 whiskeys that were not in kind of those normal, like, really big categories. So for example, I had 1 Canadian and 1 Indian whiskey, and that's all I did this year, which is kind of awful, considering the concept of my channel has always been everything. There's a million bourbon channels out there. There's some Scotch channels. There's basically no Irish whiskey channels. But there are like a million different whiskeys out there, and many of them are from different parts of the world. And I get it. It can be hard to find some of these, but that's part of the fun too, is I like to, especially with Indian and Japanese whiskeys, those are somewhat readily available at this point, especially with like a modicum of effort, you can probably find what you're looking for. I did actually have somebody comment that I should do a Scandinavian whiskey, and I was like, first off, what would that even be? I don't know. So I'm excited for that concept. And actually they gave me a name of a place, and I'm going to look them up and see if I can find a bottle of it. But I want to have a wider range. That doesn't mean I'm going to abandon bourbon. Certainly not going to abandon Scotch, because to me, I'm in my like Scotch phase. I very much have been for the last few years. When I look at YouTube, this is going to be a little bit of a tangent, but when I look at YouTube and I look at the other channels that have been started up over the last few years, there's like 10 new bourbon channels a day. And that's only like a slight exaggeration. Honestly, it's probably like 5 new bourbon channels a week. It's kind of insane how many new channels have started up. And then if you expand that to TikTok and Instagram and not so much Twitter, most people aren't using X so much anymore, but Threads, like there's bourbon is everywhere. And I get it. Like, the US loves bourbon, and most of the people who are consuming the content that I make are from the US. A lot of them are actually from India and Canada too, but like the US is definitely number one. And because of that, I get why they're doing bourbon channels. They're also easy to start off with. They're inexpensive. A lot of people go to bourbon first. That was actually kind of how I started my channel. I think my very first video was Jack Daniels. And then I think video number 3 was like Bullet, right? So it makes sense to start with bourbons. I'm past that. I think bourbon's great, but I also think Scotch is more interesting for me personally to talk about. And I love the idea that most Scotch distilleries are very old, because when I started this channel, the whole point was I wanted to find cool stories about distilleries and then talk about them. And bourbon, I don't know how to say this. I hope I don't like just make people annoyed, but most bourbon distilleries make up stories. And I'm not saying the Scotch ones don't, but I can usually find evidence to support a lot of the claims that the Scotch industry makes. I cannot find very much evidence to support the claims that bourbon industry makes. Some of them, for sure, but it's few and far between. And once you've covered a few of the cool stories like Fitzgerald, or Old Fitz, and larceny, kind of the same story really. And then there's a few others, like Jack Daniels even. There's a few different stories there, and very few of them have any real evidence, but they are like, oh, here's like 10 different stories about Jack Daniels. It's like, well, let me at least cover them all, and maybe some will be real. I like the history of the whiskeys. That's why I do this channel. So I'm more about Scotch at the moment. But anyway, that was a big tangent. So I want to focus on world whiskeys. I want to focus on India. I want to focus on Canada actually this year, which is something I never thought I would say. Definitely going to focus on Scotch and Irish. Irish will be my usual Irish whiskey month in March. I am, however, going to redo my beginner bourbon buying guide, my beginner Scotch buying guide, and all of those things. My goal is to remake these videos kind of one per month. I'd like to start. Actually, I don't know which one I'm going to start with, but I'm probably not going to put anything out like that out until February, because I feel like I already want to be writing it if it's going to be coming out in January, and I haven't. So maybe starting in February, I'm going to start putting out those beginner buying guides, and I might even try to do this every year. It's just a really good thing to have a list like that that's updated with newer stuff, because, I think like the first one I did, I might have even had, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that's, let's say like Bullet, right? Like Bullet is an okay bourbon to kind of get into right away. It's very readily available in your shops or whatever, your bars. But let's think, like if you're going to the bar, it's going to be easy to get. If you go to a store, you probably have much better options in the same price point. So things like that, I'd like to consider and really do some research and do my own research of drinking it and see what I think are good beginner whatevers. I also have never written one for Canadian whiskey because I just don't have enough experience with Canadian whiskey. I do have enough experience with Indian whiskey, but I've never made one of those. So I will probably do one of those as well. Okay. So it's also been like 7 or 8 years since I put those videos out, and they still do fantastic reviews. So I would like to remake them. All right. Oh, this one's fun. Okay. So check this out. So I get samples constantly. It is a wonderful problem to have, but the problem that I have is doing a review on little bottles of whiskey. I have found to not be something I love to do. It's very few and far between where I feel like giving you value with a small bottle of whiskey makes any sense. If I can only take 1 or 2 drinks of something before it's gone, that's not something I feel confident in saying like, this is fantastic, you should definitely buy this, because I don't know how it opens up over time. So what I am going to do this year for my shorts is whenever I get one of these kind of things, I'm just going to make a short about it. This way, it's not like a 5 to 6 hour commitment on my part where I have to research and film and edit and publish and do whatever SEO and whatever else I have to do. It's just going to be a short. It's going to be, here's what this is. I looked at it for a couple minutes. Here's some information about it. Here's what it tastes like, what it smells like, and what I think about it, on first impression. So I like that concept. I think it's a great idea for shorts, and that's definitely something I'm going to be doing this year. Okay, live streaming. So let's talk about my failure of live streaming. As I kind of went into before, and I won't spend a ton of time here, I would like to live stream more this year. I say that pretty much every year, and I'm hoping that it doesn't go the same way as it always does, where I do even less and less and less of it. What I do want to try to do is just find some time that works and then just start doing it and see how it goes. Now, one of the things I've come to realize, it only took me almost 10 years to figure this out, is actually when I started YouTube, I'm not even sure if live streaming was much of a thing. I think you had to like earn your right in order to even do that. So whatever. So when you live stream, just jumping on camera and making stuff up, I don't think is a good way for me to do it. And I realized that that was what was stressing me out about it, is I didn't feel very entertaining because I had no plan. I pretty much just gone on and I, talked for a few minutes while I had a couple drinks, and then I got a little bit looser and it was fun. And then I would like chat with you guys and I had a good time. And it would always take like about 15 minutes before I feel like I was good or funny or entertaining or anything. It was more just like, oh, look who came into the chat. Oh, here's a thing. Let me do it. Here's a whiskey. Like it's something I have to prep for. And I think that's really taken me way too long to figure out. But I did a couple of live streams this year where that was my approach and they felt way better. So that's something I'm definitely going to be aiming to do. Then again, personal schedule is a problem for me, so I'm going to have to find some time that I can try to commit to, even if it's like 10 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, and just see what I can do. All right. Other than that, one more thing, not really the Whiskey Dictionary, but the Dungeons and Dragons channel is something that has grown quite a bit in the last year. It's up over 1,500 subscribers, and it's growing by about 15 to 20 per day, which is awesome. So if D&D is a thing that you're at all interested in, you should go check out Dungeons and Drams. It's me, Jason from Mash and Drum, Ed from the Rock Gut Review, Adriana from Whiskey Mountains, Clifton from Bourbon Bites, and all of us play every week on Monday. So I can find a time to live stream. I just need to have some friends to do it with me. And that's another thing I'd like to try to do with my live stream, is have more people. Like, I know that there's these cliques kind of that have developed over time, and I would like to be part of them, frankly. I mean, that's kind of saying it easily, but I do think the fact that I don't stream very much makes people not really think of me so much when they're inviting people to do contests or whatever else, or just be generally entertaining. So I'd like to kind of prove myself again as a live streamer, and then hopefully start getting invited to do some of these live streams with some of the other tubers, because it's just fun to be not solo on camera and like have a little back and forth. Anyway, so this has gone on a lot longer than I expected, but it was nice to kind of get a brain dump and show you that I have a plan. All right, so that's my goals for 2024 and the recap of 2023. So I hope that you guys look forward to all the new content this year. If there's anything that you'd like, there was one more thing, actually. I didn't even write this down because I was toying with the idea, but the more I talk about it, the more I realize I do want to do it. So on my Patreon, one thing I don't do nearly enough is ask people in Patreon for what they want me to review. So that is actually going to be something that I go out of my way to make sure I'm doing at least once a month, is reviewing something that the Patreon community wants me to review. And so that's going to be something. I mean, I figure that they're donating to the channel. They should definitely get more of a say in some of the stuff that happens. So that's something I'm going to be doing. So if you're interested in joining the Patreon or just checking it out, you should go do that and you can be part of that. So, all right, that does it for real this time for my recap of 2023 and my goals for 2024. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. I hope you have a happy new year, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.